Welcome back to the deep dive. So, have you ever wondered why some people seem to have miracles happen all the time and others just don't?
Yeah, it's a common question, isn't it?
We've been looking at this really interesting source that has kind of an unusual perspective on this exact thing.
It does. It challenges some common assumptions.
Definitely. So, today we're diving into this idea that maybe, just maybe, how often we think we see miracles is tied to how well we actually get reality.
Right. Our mission today is basically to unpack that, see what this source is really saying about miracles and, our own understanding.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. How does the source even define a miracle?
Well, it's interesting. It's not necessarily about divine intervention in the way we often think. It defines a miracle as pretty much anything that looks like it's happening in an unnatural way.
A natural how?
Like, it seems to go against the laws of reality as we understand them. That's the key part. It contrasts this with what it calls the way of nature, stuff that makes sense to us, that fits our current model.
Gotcha. So if something happens and we're like, whoa, how did that happen? That's potentially a miracle in this context.
Potentially, yeah. But here's the main argument. The source suggests that this perception, this labeling something as a miracle, is actually linked to a lack of understanding.
A lack of understanding. How so?
Hey, the idea is the more confused or maybe misled someone is about how reality really works, the more events they're likely to encounter that they just can't explain.
And those unexplained things get tagged as miracles.
Exactly. It's like the gaps in our knowledge get filled with the idea of the miraculous.
Okay, that flips the script a bit. So what about people who do understand things? The wise ones, the scientists, maybe?
Well, according to this source, people who have a deep grasp of the intellect and set of laws governing the world, they don't really experience miracles.
Yeah, why not?
Because for them, everything fits. Even the surprising stuff. Maybe it's complex, but it still operates within a consistent, understandable framework. They see the bigger picture, the underlying rules.
So no event breaks the rules for them because they understand the rules more deeply.
That's the idea. An event isn't a miracle. It's just data. It fits the system, even if the system is way more complex than most people realize.
So believing in miracles could actually stem from mistakenly thinking you understand reality, but you don't quite have the full picture.
That seems to be a key implication. Something seems inexplicable, totally out of the blue, to someone who's a bit confused. So they call it a miracle.
Instead of saying, maybe my understanding is incomplete.
Right. The miracle highlights a gap in their knowledge, not necessarily a break in reality itself.
So there's this direct relationship then. More confusion.
More perceived miracles. Less confusion, deeper understanding.
Fewer miracles. Makes you think about ancient explanations for weather versus meteorology now.
Precisely. Lightning wasn't a miracle once we understood electrical discharge in the atmosphere. The phenomenon didn't change, our understanding did.
What's also fascinating is this bit about even partial understanding. The source suggests that just recognizing the limits of your own knowledge, that alone can stop you from seeing miracles.
Yeah, that's a subtle point. If you know you don't know everything, maybe you're less quick to label something inexplicable as impossible or miraculous.
You just accept it as something you don't understand yet. It doesn't seem more or less logical than anything else you don't fully grasp.
It just is. It falls on that spectrum of comprehension we talked about.
The source also briefly touches on what's behind all these laws, right? This idea of a single intellect versus randomness.
It does. It mentions this concept of a singular, maybe unchanging intellect. You think of it maybe as God or just the fundamental logic of the universe that governs everything consistently.
But it doesn't rule out randomness entirely.
No, but it sort of poses a question. Even if things seem random to us, could that apparent randomness just be part of a much larger, incredibly complex pattern or intellect that we just can't see yet?
Like chaos theory, almost. Order hidden within seeming disorder.
Kind of along those lines, yeah. The limits of our perception again.
Okay, let's try and pull this together. The big takeaway from this source seems to be that miracles aren't really about reality breaking its own rules.
Not necessarily, no.
Yeah.
It frames them more as reflections.
Reflections of what?
Reflections of where we are in our understanding, our comprehension or lack thereof of how the world consistently works, even if that working is super complex or currently unknown to us.
So it puts the focus back on the observer, not just the event.
Exactly. Which leads to a really interesting question for everyone listening.
Right. If you experience something that feels like a miracle,
Yeah.
What is that experience telling you? Is it revealing something profound about the external event itself?
Or is it perhaps revealing more about the current state of your own knowledge, your own grasp, or maybe misunderstanding of the world around you?
Lot to think about there.
Definitely something to ponder.
Huh.
Thanks for taking this deep dive with us today.